Do you do the sort of same?
Well, FTD works actually, it's not free. The students pay a fee that's built into their...
Right, so I mean you can't say there's so many passengers and that will bring in so much revenue to determine the numbers, right? Because we're not paying for rides.
Right.
So I don't know if you sort of adapted that. They have a contract.
Well, we also took MTD's their annual revenue.
Okay.
And we used that and averaged that in as well to get a better number. So we did look into that as well and took an average. We can show you that later, actually, how we did it. So as I was saying, we not only have to look into the economic feasibility, but also just the design restrictions, which are outlined in the campus master plan, and as well as the two cities comprehensive plans, which outline what they want to implement in the upcoming years. U of I also poses a unique situation where there's multiple ownerships of the streets, and if we're having the system going over the streets, we would have to satisfy all the needs of these three entities, and that goes into gaining support, which is needed. We need letters of support in order to submit funding proposals for research and development. And with that, I'll pass it over to Eric.
Thank you. I will speak to you about the funding process. The first part of the funding process will be to write the actual proposal and submit the proposal to separate entities to gain letters of support. After gaining those letters of support, we must submit the proposal to the Federal Transit Authority for appropriate grants. If submitting to an actual request of the Federal Transit Authority, qualifications are needed, and if accepted, we'll receive allocated funding depending on how big and depending on the project. The actual proposal will be an external unsolicited proposal. It will be external because we are a separate entity. It will be unsolicited because we have to show that these entities that a problem does exist. And we will, in the proposal, we will request a feasibility study for a PMT system on or near campus. These are a few FTA grants. A couple ones to note would be the Tiger Grant. Last year, 43 of 561 were accepted. They allocated $100 million to these projects. MTD actually applied for this but did not receive the grant. Another big grant would be the New Starts program. They allocate $2 billion a year for alternative modes of multimodal transportation designs. What costs do we need to consider? To begin the proposal, in the proposal, a feasibility study costs around $10,000, and this can be done by a consulting group. Also, the engineering design portion of the project will cost around $50,000. These are averages we took from West Virginia, the Morgantown PMT. Grant writing can be done in-house to save on costs, or we can hire a consultant to help pursue that. And all these must be weighed by Ron Ballard against the probability of the project being accepted. In conclusion, we decided the basic campus loop is the most feasible based on cost analysis. The PMT system here on campus, if implemented, could solve many transportation problems, current and future. There has been some interest shown, specifically from Urbana, but no immediate plan for action. And our recommendations, what we'll be doing in the next few weeks, we will complete the proposal for a feasibility study on campus, and we will apply for appropriate grants. Here's a picture of our grant chart. This is where we're at right here, and now we would like to open for question and answers.
I didn't quite understand. Are you going to have parking places around the camp for the people that live LCD?
Yeah, I'll take that question. So the way it works right now is obviously, parking's on campus. When we actually met with the University of Illinois Transportation Demand Management Department, they explained to us that in the I believe it's 20-year master plan, they expect to take all the parking lots off campus and move them to the outskirts of campus. That's happening regardless of whether a PMT system is implemented or not. So where all the parking lots are right now, those will be replaced with buildings. So since those parking lots are being moved to the outskirts of campus, some sort of system will have to be able to handle bringing people from the parking lots to the inside of campus, whether it's a bus system or a PMT system. So if we did develop a PMT system, we'd have to consider that.
If that's the case, your cost analysis might be flawed. Because if people have to take half an hour to go from place of work to the parking lot. They are not going to do that at their own time. So you should take into consideration the cost of the faculty that have to take half an hour in terms of research, productivity. All of that will be impacted. Also, women that might have children at home if they get sick, can they afford, for example, taking half an hour to go pick up their house, to go home, or to go to the babysitter? They get sick, and they receive a phone call saying that their child is sick. All of these needs to be analyzed because they have inherent costs.
Okay.
Would you like to?
Thank you.
So the other questions I have are regarding those feasibility studies. So if you look at if you go back to that chart that you had in the campus group and those three options where you came up with the rates of return, I think here you need to kind of spend a little more time trying to figure out how these numbers change when you change certain aspects of your design. So
Okay.
for instance, if you
Change track length or?
change track lengths, well, track lengths are in some sense clearer, but the two things that I have in mind. The first thing is that you've come up with an implementation of this full scale. So which means that you're really looking at implementing the entire loop. Suppose you decide you only want to implement a particular length, a particular length, and then you look at that as being in some sense the pilot study where you actually go use that kind of generate funds and then do the rest in a stage-wise fashion. You might get better rates of return.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
Yes,
Suppose
yeah.
you just think there's one link which if you added you would kind of ease the
Right. This is where we got all our information from. So, for example, here's one of our utilization numbers. So, we could change these as well as here's how we got our estimates on
I don't think
utilization.
change these. I mean, if you go to the route that you constructed, so in that route, in some sense, you've got a fairly intricate route. Suppose you essentially looked at that route as being a consequence of stage-wise implementation. So you do a particular part in the first three years, the next part in the next 2 years, and so on. I think that might give, because frankly, in practice, what's going to happen is that they're going to break it up.
Okay.
And at least with these rates of return, it looks unlikely that they're going to be able to afford it at the onset price. That's one thing. So you may want to think about that to add some texture to your analysis, figure out if you can actually do it in that.
And that would change our utilization.
Yeah, the
What would that
second
be
thing
the
is the
main thing?
utilization seems to be a static number. I mean, I go back to Professor Reese's point. The utilization is something that's time-bearing. It just seems like it's a number that is extraordinarily important, yet there is no sensitivity to the rates of return given on that number. So ideally what you'd like to see is that if the utilization is higher, this is what the rates of return would be. If they're lower, does it grow linearly? I don't
So
know.
we could make a graph of the utilization versus rate of return.
Something like that to get some feel for how sensitive.
Okay.
We kind of set our utilization to the bare minimum, just for these studies as a conservative estimate, because we figured if this was a new system, and it might take some time to for people to adapt to the system and start using it. So our MTD numbers, we figured out how many passengers they have per year. I think we use 25% or 10% of the ridership right now.
Are you assuming that you're going to be cannibalizing some entities?
Yeah.
We were hoping, by 10%, we're not saying we're taking all their 10% of their riders. We were hoping to share that percentage with them.
So
Those 10% would use the PMT as well as the buses.
you can just get 5% of it?
We could change it to 5% as well.
No, so I'm asking you, so if they had 100 riders currently, you're assuming you're going to get 5 of their riders, based on your analysis. Is that what you're saying?
Or 10.
Maybe thinking 10.
Okay, you're saying 10. So you think share, you mean, are you sharing the 10 or are you just going
Yeah,
to
we're
get 10?
taking
Sharing.
Taking 10.
Taking 10, okay.
taking part of the pie.
So I think you need to add a little more to the feasibility study because you put $10,000 in that. This is the $10,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you need to spend more time looking at these numbers and trying to see whether you can get a more, just a more detailed analysis.
All right.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a good question actually.
Sure.
So in your report, I remember for the competing, basically 2 or 3 that you had in other cities, they were all had help from government, right?
Yes.
Right.
So you did not at all consider that in your economic analysis, right?
The government grants?
Yeah.
Oh, it was in there. Sorry, go back to
Which one do you want?
you mean writing the actual grants and applying for them?
No, I was asking.
Oh, for the
if that
cost
was
analysis.
Economic analysis, yeah.
No, what we would do is that would go into our year 0, and if we received a certain amount of funding, that would offset this capital cost.
Yeah, but I'm really confused. So when you were comparing with the other operating costs of other similar systems,
Mhm.
was that considering they had the
No,
grant?
their operating costs we got from, or operating costs or capital costs, I'm sorry.
So it's both the capital costs there.
The capital cost, we just got a cost per track link when they built the system.
Okay.
So that was about $15 million per mile of
And the
track.
operating costs?
The operating costs, we got numbers per year.
Still, it doesn't answer the question. Do you consider that they have help from other agencies?
We didn't consider that in our initial cost analysis. We just assumed that this is without any funding, before we receive funding.
But then you are actually hurting your own analysis, right? Because
Right, this is kind of conservative estimate, like we said before. So if we do receive federal funding, then obviously our revenue would go up and we would have to pay less for the capital costs and things like that. So.